I am Victoria Bola Okerinde, and welcome to Creatives in Focus. On this platform, we share conversations with creatives and founders who have real and relatable stories. These amazing individuals are excelling in their fields, doing good, and creating for impact. As you can see, we have a new setup. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you like it. Do comment and let us know. This week is all about entrepreneurship and innovation, and I'm bringing to you a founder interview. I had the pleasure to interview one of my friends, Jason Kitenge. He is a social entrepreneur, a policy advisor, a writer, and the founder of the amazing organization PAMOJA Network. So PAMOJA Network is a pre-accelerator delivering consultancy to entrepreneurs in Africa. And their aim is to facilitate job creation for young people in local communities. I was so excited, and I am so excited to bring this conversation to you. Speaking to Jason about PAMOJA Network, I've been so impressed and so inspired by the work that him and his team are doing across the world. This is an international social enterprise. On this episode, we talk about starting and building a social enterprise. We also speak about youth employment and innovation. We talk about investing in the Black community and in Africa as a wider reach. I must say it was so fantastic speaking to Jason and catching up, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. So let us get straight into it. Introducing Jason Kitenge. Hello.
Hey Vic, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, on Creatives in Focus podcast. I have been a fan of PAMOJA for a long time. And it's really incredible to kind of see what you have, and you and your team have achieved with PAMOJA. It's really nice to talk to the man behind vision. And PAMOJA really like strengthens my belief in like the young African in general, and like their potential to actually cause impact and influence the development of the continent. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's actually an honor to be on this. Looking at your platform from way back when we followed each other on Instagram, just looking at the people that you've been interviewing, it's a bit surreal to be called up and be like, hey, I think what you're doing is cool. So it's a pleasure to be here, and hopefully I can pass something on of value.
Definitely. I think you have a lot of advice, a lot of experience, and I think everyone will learn from it today. We usually start off by just delving into your journey so far. So if you could kind of just introduce yourself to everyone in terms of your education, your professional background. Yeah.
Cool. So hi everyone. Although I can't see you because it's a podcast, of course, but it's great to be able to actually spread my story. So my name is Jason Kitenge. My last name is actually Kenyan, so Kenyan garment, but I'm Congolese origin. Story starts a while ago. Parents are both from Congo. My twin sisters were born in Johannesburg in South Africa, and I was born here. I was born in Brixton in London. I suppose my story, as the most of the time, starts with education. It starts with university, when you're at that critical point of who it is, when the world is starting to ask you, well, what do you want to do? When you leave this sort of place where you don't have to do anything other than study, party, and whatever. So I think that's where my story really started, and I started to really think a lot about what it was that I wanted to do. And I was fortunate because my dad works in the third sector, so he's an international development person. He does fundraising. I was always interested in political economy at school. At at secondary school, I was very interested in entrepreneurship. In fact, I was the kid who used to bring in a gym bag full of crisps and sell them on the playground. Legally, wink, wink.
Legally.
So exactly. So I was very interested in hustling. I was very interested in all of those things. And I think when I got to university in my second and my final year, my second year, I was working on the International Development Society alongside my studies. I was studying accounting and finance, by the way. And in my final year, with a team of maybe 10 or so people, we built the first Africa Summit at Warwick. And that's since been attended by, our keynote was now the Prime Minister of Sudan. And it's since been attended by Vice President. Yeah, so it's been attended by Vice President Osinbajo, Dangote as well. So I think leaving university as well. So I left that project behind with a new team, and it's continued to grow, which is amazing. Leaving university, I went into consulting, and I came to sort of a crossroads in my life, going to consulting. It was financial services. I thought it would be one thing. It turned out to be another, and I really wasn't enjoying it, but I was learning a lot. So since then, I've decided to redirect myself, and I now work in the civil service in commercial advisory, and I'm hoping to build my policy experience and focus more and more on Africa. Yeah, that's my story.
Fantastic. Wow. And it's really great that your passion for Africa, for the youth, for development, for change started off like quite young, like you said. And I believe all these experiences have like helped you to develop and will help you to continue to develop as a change agent, as a CEO, as a leader.
Hopefully. One thing that's quite interesting, Victoria, as well, was like when I was young, it was like 2008, it was the recession period, and my dad lost both his jobs, and we, at that time, it was like, well, what is going on in the world that my dad will lose both his jobs? And that's when my interest in political economy started. It was like, how does one influence the other? And then obviously that developed into, focusing more on development and growth in Africa and stuff like that. But it's those life experiences, like you say, of things that happen to you. Like, I think it's when you start asking that question, like, well, why has that happened? And what can I try and do to maybe not just improve my own circumstances, but, as an extrapolation on myself, be like, how can I do a bit more here? But it's those experiences that you talk about.
Yeah, amazing. I think it's just kind of asking yourself, why is this happening and what can I do to solve the problems? Or how can I engage with other people to work together to address any issues that I'm seeing, things that I want to see, that I want to change. So let's talk about PAMOJA, because you started this off right out of university. And some of the listeners may not be aware of PAMOJA. So can you kind of expand on the vision behind PAMOJA Network and what it offers?
Absolutely. So first of all, I guess starting with the name is always great. So PAMOJA is a Swahili word, and it's Swahili because, like I said, both my parents are from Congo, and my mum and dad both speak Swahili. I don't. I speak French, but I'm learning. I won't be a hypocrite. So
I'm learning a little bit as well.
PAMOJA, no. So I kind of I wanted something that was very authentic when we were talking about Africa. So PAMOJA means together, and it was built around the proverb that I saw, which was, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So the essence of PAMOJA is to foster better collaborative relationships, not just between the diaspora and the entrepreneurs on the ground, but between the young professionals who are also on the ground with entrepreneurs themselves. So I suppose to answer the question directly, what PAMOJA is, it's a pre-accelerator focusing on entrepreneurs. So what that means is, what we do is we connect teams from the diaspora and from young people on the ground, young professionals on the ground, to entrepreneurs. We build those consulting teams, to support entrepreneurs in growing and scaling their business. And our team, our PAMOJA team based in London, sources entrepreneurs, understands what it is that they require, and builds those teams to support them over the course of about a 6-week sprint. We build, we support them with their problem statement. So I think, looking more broadly outside of what we do, I think the real important thing is why we've come together to actually build PAMOJA. The reason is that, just to throw a few statistics, by 2050, Africa is going to have the largest workforce in the world by continent. It's going to be there's going to be about 2.2 billion people on the continent. Right now, there's 1.2 billion. So at the same time as that's happening, right now, 60% of the population who are unemployed are young people.
Yeah.
Every year.
Sorry, in Africa.
12 million young in Africa. Yeah.
Okay.
In Africa.
Sorry, just
every year. That's fine. It's fine. It's absolutely. There's a lot of stats, but every year you see 12 million young people coming into work, and there's only 3 million jobs. So what that means is that there's a shortfall in jobs. Ultimately, what we're looking at is when President Macron in France is like, well, we can't afford immigration, or people are risking their lives to come across to France or to the coast, Calais, wherever it may be, to try and find a better life. What we're risking is a humanitarian crisis if we're not focusing on the problem, which is youth unemployment, building jobs. Because the way I see it, these young Africans are just as talented as we are, just as knowledgeable. They just have a shortfall in capital, access to capital, and sometimes particular expertise. So I think at the primary stage of PAMOJA, what we can do is offer the expertise and connect the expertise that's already on the continent. And then longer term, we can focus on facilitating capital movement to support these entrepreneurs. The last thing I'll probably say is like entrepreneurship for me, when you go to the continent, there's a culture that is undeniable. You will be sold something. Wherever you go.
Definitely.
And 90%, everywhere you go, it's like, it's unavoidable. There's a culture, and it's 90% of the economy is pushed by the informal sector. 90% of the economy, of African economies. So when you look at that, you're thinking, well, how do we tap into this to make this more powerful in terms of creating jobs? So those are the kind of things that we think about. We think about entrepreneurship and how entrepreneurs will power the continent. We think about young people and putting them at the seat of being able to create jobs. And we also think about development as an extension of that.
Yeah. Wow. It's a lot. I mean, but you guys are doing amazing things. It is quite a lot. When I think about Africa, I'm an African. I was born. One of the things that you are speaking about, I have seen firsthand. I have seen, graduates, first class graduates, kind of, in some way, just kind of walking the streets looking for jobs. And if they don't have connections, if they don't, prescribe to certain things, to certain cultures that are damaging, they may not be able to find a job. And it is really, really demoralizing. But I think what you and PAMOJA are doing is really kind of taking it in the hands of the youth to call for change, to really connect with people within the continent and outwith of the continent, to really say, hey guys, look, this is a problem, we need to solve it. You have the expertise, we have, the manpower and the idea. Let's work together, and let's create change. I think amazing. It is a topic that, I mean, when you started speaking about this, when we met up earlier in the year, I was like, oh my God, this is, it's like, oh, but you know what? You guys are doing amazing, and I fully believe and back everything that you're doing, and I'm really excited to hear, and I'm sure we'll hear more about kind of the
Thank you.
key things that you're doing. But I mean, I'm gonna touch on experience because that's something that I try to encourage, even within the UK, is, you know, encourage young people to get as much experience as they can. So this can include volunteering, internships, like as soon as you're in first year, second year, start applying for internships. And if you can get an international internship as well, that would really broaden sort of your knowledge and your worldview of your particular the industry that you are in. Okay, so let's talk about entrepreneurship from your viewpoint in terms of your experience of entrepreneurship. As a CEO, as a leader, what has been your experience so far like? Can you just let us know a little bit about your experience as CEO of PAMOJA Network?
It's interesting, Vic. So I personally, I don't think of myself as a CEO, right? I'm not saying this as in I hope the team would agree in terms of the way I behave. So I don't think of myself as a CEO. I do think of myself more as a leader than a CEO. And I try and make the distinction between the two. So I think personally I can do it, but I'm not great at particulars all the time. I'm more good at thinking about where it is and the design and things of that nature. And I think the second thing as well about the discrepancy between CEO and founder is, so the way I think one thing that I'm decent at doing is building teams and trying to make teams quite effective. And so in order to do that, my belief, one of my principles is that you build a circular corporate structure, quote unquote. You don't build a tiered one. So what that means is everyone has a position to play, and one isn't more influential. Well, one isn't more important than the other. I can't say influential because obviously as a founder, people are going to probably listen to you quite intently, more than some other members of the team, naturally. But I think building that circular corporate structure means that everyone has empowerment, everyone has autonomy, and everyone really feels like they're building, and they are building something to move in this a particular direction. So I think that's basically how I think about the CEO thing, and how I found it. It's been you grow fast.
You have to.
You grow fast. Yeah, you grow fast because it's all well and good when you're doing everything at your own pace, where it's just you, and today you can do this and tomorrow you can do that. But then when you build a team, and as I also built an advisory board as well, you start to become more accountable to things that you've said. There needs to be a consistency level there, and there needs to be a humility factor there, that your way isn't particularly the most pristine way of going about it. Or there's the humbling factor is you have to now consult your team before you move in a particular direction. And what that means is your team is only as effective as the person who gets it least. And that can be me as well. So the person who understands it the least, the direction that we're going, that's as effective as you'll be. And that's my kind of belief. Because I'm very much for setting the bar high and things of that nature, but I'm also at the same time very much for we take this journey together.
Yeah, amazing. Wow. Fantastic. And I do agree with you. I think, as a leader, you should work with your team to ensure that everyone kind of is carried along in the vision. And that will really impact how far you can go and how quickly you can achieve what you want to achieve. So delving more into your entrepreneurship journey, what has been the stumbling blocks, and can you let us into the triumphs of PAMOJA, like in terms of getting investors, in terms of people actually believing in your vision?
Yeah. The stumbling blocks really came early on because we were slow out of the gate, even though it doesn't look like it. So PAMOJA
Okay.
originally, before we also had, so I think one thing that's worth adding as well, which I forgot, is that we also have insights, which are thought leadership from young Africans on the
Okay.
continent. And we also have webinars and podcasts, so where we discuss a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the stumbling blocks coming out of the beginning of PAMOJA was, okay, I have all of these ideas. How do we make it succinct? You know?
Mm-hmm.
So early on, we were chasing a lot of different things. And that was me maturing to understand, especially as someone who's relatively young, maturing to understand, right, you need to have one focus and then you can start to build things around. So I think the stumbling blocks were trying to define what are we designed to tackle. And a resource that really helped me with this was there's a YouTube series called Design for Impact. It's about 8 episodes long, and it's run by this guy called Ken, who has a company called the 1 Acre Fund, which is focusing on investing in impact investment in agriculture in, I think it's East Asia, something like that. So he really supported me in, it's a YouTube series, in designing and understanding, no, not 10 things, one thing. What do you want to do? And what that also helped me do is then use what I understood from that series and relay it back to my team clearly and be like, you know, without waffling, be like, I can probably sit here and answer all of your questions now. So I think my stumbling block was absolutely trying to understand what it is that I'm designed to impact, which eventually obviously is youth unemployment, job creation, whichever way you want to look at it. Triumphs have been in the last couple of weeks. Funnily enough, COVID has given us all an opportunity to step back. So going into the COVID season, I kind of was like to the team, right, we're at home now. And whilst we're settling in, it's a big opportunity to get more content out. So I think one of the triumphs were our webinars. So we
Yeah,
ran a webinar.
that was really
It
good. I
was
did
really
watch it.
nice to see.
Yeah,
It was like we
yeah.
ran, thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much. It was, we ran a webinar on whether African nations should be adopting the same COVID-19 policies as the rest of the world. And we had some really amazing young African talent on the call, entrepreneurs, policy leaders, consultants. So we had about 3 people on the call, and it was chaired by one of the PAMOJA team members, Olan. So I think that was a great win. And I think another big win has been our kicking off, which kicks off on this coming Monday, which is the 23rd of June. Our first project, so our pilot project with a young lady who runs an agribusiness in Kenya. So
Amazing.
right now, we've really focused on this year alone, rather than focusing on revenue, focusing on building the brand by
Yeah.
pushing out 2 projects and 2 webinars. And then next year, we're really looking at the funding, which I'm obviously thinking about now, but we're looking at the funding and all of things of that nature. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. I can, to be honest with you, I'm only hearing triumphs from everything that you're saying. Yeah, amazing. And in terms of people believing in your vision when you first started, like, did you find it difficult in terms of like maybe your parents or your friends, or even like you mentioned, you have an advisory board, so you must have gone to some leaders in different industries. Did you find it was hard for others to believe in your vision for PAMOJA?
Funnily enough, I'll tell you what, I didn't because I think when you're doing something authentic, when you really believe in what you're doing, it's not difficult to convince people because you're very candid. So I was running around there. I was going up the country to go to Warwick to recruit one of the team members to run our socials. I was finishing work and going for drinks with one person who ended up on our advisory board. I was doing interviews with team members. When I was building the team, I was looking for people who managed to balance their studies with another project. So I was looking on LinkedIn, meeting people. So in terms of the actual work behind finding the people that you wanted to speak to, that was quite tough in terms of, okay, these are big decisions, so you need to kind of, pick carefully, which has worked out, which I'm very blessed for. But I think in terms of convincing people around the vision of PAMOJA, what I tended to speak from was the heart and the ethos of what I wanted it to be. The tapping into the diaspora, the entrepreneurs who are already on the continent doing amazing work, and the connecting the two. And then everything else started to fall into place, because what I found was I brought a body of work which was far away from what it is today. And I sat and I showed the advisory board team, and I showed people, this is what I think I want to build today. Well, I think, to be honest, I was like, this is what it is, but it changed in a way, obviously. But I brought that to the table, and I kind of understood, tried to build a relationship, tried to understand more about the other person and what they wanted out of this, and tried to. I brought something to the table, and I spoke about it, and we had a conversation about it, and then the vibe was good. So yeah, I think to answer your question, it wasn't too difficult. No.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I mean, if I heard about PAMOJA 2-3 years ago, I would definitely be on board. So, I mean, yeah, I think, I just wanted to know, because being an entrepreneur, being quite young, sometimes people may struggle to believe in you, or may look at where you are in terms of just coming out of uni. But that's why I wanted to ask and see what your experience has been like. And I think it's really, really fantastic. And I mean, it shows that you were you passionate about what you do. You kind of knew where you were going. And I really like the point that you mentioned about building your team, looking for people who are able to balance, because your team is young as well, who are able to balance full-time work and education. So I've learned a lot from what you've told us about your entrepreneurship journey.
Thank you.
So PAMOJA works across 2 continents, and even more. So like, how are you managing to work across the continents? Because I mean, your team is mainly in the UK, but you are liaising with other individuals and teams in Africa. Like, how are you managing the communication, the operation, and everything? Because it is a lot.
It is, yeah. No, it is. I won't front. It is a lot at times. I mean, it's a few things, right? I think the first thing is how we try and find entrepreneurs is by our ambassadors. So we have this thing called PAMOJA ambassadors, which are young people who are in entrepreneurship networks on the continent. So they source people for us because they believe in what we're doing. So I think that's the first way that we go about it. And also the second thing is the COVID time has also given us a better understanding of how to operate using technology. So our projects are going to be obviously done via webinar, because looking at our team right now that are going to be working from Monday, one's in London, 2 are in London, I think 2 are in Kenya, and 1 is in the USA. So we're using, we're really leveraging technology to be able to do our pilot project. Where I can see complexity on the horizon is, our hope is next year that we start to fly people to the continent to work with entrepreneurs on the ground, so that they can get the full flavor of what's actually going on. I think that's where logistically from a project management perspective, we might see some issues creep up, which is fine. Like, we need to learn. And I think the other thing is longer term, perhaps setting up a PAMOJA hub on the continent or something of that nature. Will definitely run into some challenges on the legality side and trying to set up and understand how it works over there. But by then, I think the relationships that we've built over the course of this year, next year, next 5 years, will make that process a bit easier. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So let's talk about sort of the current state that we're in. So we are kind of in the recovery state. That was what public health would call it, a recovery state of COVID and the pandemic. And we are very aware that it has caused employment rates to fall in the UK, in fact, across the world. And
exactly.
There's some stats just for anyone who's like, but there's some stats. For instance, the UK unemployment rate was steady at like 3.9% about 3 months ago. But according to the ONS, it's dropped by more than like 60,000. Like the number of workers on the UK payrolls have dropped by about 60,000. And when we look at the impact on the youth, I mean, it is really impacted the quality of jobs for young people available. I mean, you know, we have some young people working 0-hour contracts. Some of them are actually in informal employment. And it's really caused quite a lot of impact within youth unemployment.
Youngest population,
they
have the youngest median age.
Youngest median age. And then looking at the impact of COVID, I mean, about nearly 20 million jobs, both formal and informal, are actually threatened by this. So anyway, I've quoted all the quotes, but so I would like to know, with regards to COVID, what are the opportunities post-pandemic? Like, we've talked about the negatives. We know that this has impacted the world, but what opportunities are available, you know, after this pandemic for the UK and for Africa in terms of youth employment?
Well, it's a loaded question. I'll put it that way. So I think if we start from like I'll try and tackle it. So if we start from like a macro perspective, right? This year we saw the UK Africa Investment Forum, right? And that was we had all of these companies and heads of state come to Westminster. That is still ongoing, especially as being part of the civil service. A lot of the Department of International Trade department is focused on that is FTAs. So they're really focused on these free trade agreements with Africans. So they're trying to facilitate more and more trade. So we say that from a macro perspective. So even despite this corona season, the UK is leaving the EU. The UK needs to find new trading partners, and the UK has identified, rightly so, Africans as the next frontier of economic power. So that, I think that's the first thing. Second thing I think to point out is probably what becomes tricky with African economies is, like America, they struggle to, there is, for the most part, from what I understand, is there's no government welfare system. So what that means is people are extremely reliant on their employment. They're extremely reliant on being able to go out and work, and especially the impact on the informal sector, because a lot of it's like going to the money that you make from the market, from selling your foods and your vegetables, are really, really important. They're crucial to your day-to-day life. So I think that in itself makes it quite difficult for people. However, let's look at some of the opportunities. So I wrote an article not too long ago. I wrote an article about 3 weeks ago, which was looking at how well the continent has worked on Corona in terms of containing Corona, and how it
Yeah.
learned from Ebola.
Mm.
So
Mm.
the public health organizations across the continent had learned very much about, okay, this is how we contain the virus. For example, Senegal have $1 test kits, which they're
Yeah.
building. So there's loads of different things going on the continent, and they're really pioneering some innovative stuff. From a structural transformation standpoint, so from what Corona will do to African countries, there's 3 areas which we can look at: education, employment, and entrepreneurship. All those 3 things will be best served by digital transformation. So moving into this post-corona world, there's going to be a lot more things that people thought they couldn't do online that they can actually deliver online. So we need to look at things like, when we're scaling businesses in the continent, how do we now move from being a raw product to exporting across and building value chains which have been disrupted from the corona? So how do we move like a product from Tanzania to America? How do we build a platform for an entrepreneur so that they're aware of e-commerce and that they exploit e-commerce? From an education standpoint, something that Fred Swaniker, who has an amazing school called the African Leadership Academy, he's focusing on skills. He's basically trying to cut down the time it takes for people to be able to get a job. Like how you say you've seen in Nigeria, it takes about 5 years from when you graduate to be able to find a job. So he's basically saying, no, let's give them the skills. Yeah, yeah, from when you graduate.
Wow.
He's like, let's find them a job and export talent. And all of these things are going to be encompassed in digital transformation, investing in internet like Rwanda, like Kenya are doing. So I think the opportunities for the continent is, look, you've contained Corona very well thus far. Focus on building the digital elements of your nation. And from a micro perspective, the same. Look at exploiting e-commerce as part of your business where possible.
Wow. Oh my God, amazing. I'm going to pick on education because I know within the continent, education is very important, especially for parents who have children. And we as Africans, especially the diaspora, Africans in the UK, we spend a lot of money on education. So I know if parents can afford it, they will definitely get a tutor to ensure that we have some kind of upper hand in terms of education, in terms of our knowledge and our experience. But this does not necessarily translate to better outcomes, as you've mentioned, in terms of getting a job. But I mean, for example, we see in South Africa, Cape Town, where, you know, we have quite a lot of disparities in South Africa. We have quite a lot of disparities in terms of the class, socioeconomic status, and in Western countries, we have really seen how some countries have encouraged lifelong learning. So, I mean, what I would say is definitely we should try and put more emphasis on initiatives that really foster lifelong learning and a continuous upgrading of skills. And I know it can be really hard, especially for someone or for Africans, individuals who are looking for jobs. They're like, how do I continue to learn? It's so expensive. I think this is the opportunity for initiatives and organizations to really help to put that in place.
I think it's a matter of, you know, Vic, I think it's a matter of playing to your strengths, right, as well. It's understanding, for example, if you look at EY, Ernest Young, the accountancy firm, I believe it was last year, they scrapped for some of their entry roles the need to have a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
And I think ultimately, me speaking from the perspective of a social entrepreneur, it's a lack of experience. You've always heard like you need experience to get experience. A lack of experience is a great place to start. So if you
Like
have
that.
that mindset,
Yeah, sorry.
so if you have that mindset, I'm very sure if you have the mindset of you need and this is an organization standpoint. I'm not looking at the individual. If organizations are saying you need X, Y, and Z, I mean, for some cases, obviously it's absolutely necessary to be a doctor, a pilot, and things of that nature. But
Yeah.
we should be looking at lowering the thresholds and focusing more on what people like Fred Swanick are doing, like ALX, and offering that where you do lifelong learning. Even from a PAMOJA standpoint, entrepreneurship in itself, like I'm saying, you learn from recruiting for our recent pilot project. People who are coming on as consultants who are based in Kenya, they keep telling us stories of how they started something and they were everything. As an entrepreneur, when you start, you're the accountant, you're the receptionist, you're the marketer, you're doing the branding. So I think it's a mentality of valuing the traditional versus something that can be more applicable to today's world.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick on something that you mentioned, the mentality, because I mean, just from my own experience and my own understanding in Nigeria, it's like, number one, people are they're very, they have a thing, like, they want to see your certificate. They want to see that you've gone to university. They want to see that perhaps you've got first class. They want to see that you have done national youth service. So when you say, okay, perhaps, you don't have to have it all to start. I think we really need to tackle that mentality of they have to have so many certificates, or their certificate has to be from abroad, because that is something that, in Africa, that you see the people who are in the top positions, they have gotten their degrees from some of the top universities, or just, abroad, from the UK, from America, Germany, whatever. So I think that is the mentality that we should try and tackle in Africa, because it's like
and also
how
as an extension of Africa.
Yeah, definitely.
So, absolutely, as an extension of Africa. Sorry to cut you off. As an extension of Africa, we have the same things in our day to day. I'm in London. I know that if I apply to this particular firm, they're going to look at what uni I went to and what. So I think we're judging, or we're measuring people by uniform standard, and that's not acceptable. And that is something, again, to reflect back on ourselves at PAMOJA. When we're looking for consultants, we're not especially looking at where your education and stuff, because I tell you what, studying does not translate into the real world. You can study everything and end up in the same job as someone who's much more inexperienced than you, but has just come into the role. I've seen this multiple times, where it's like the young person against someone who's maybe taking a career switch. So I think our benchmark for entry, and our benchmark even at PAMOJA for entry, was, I had a great discussion with the team when we were talking about how we're going to select people. Well, we're going to select people. We thought about characteristics first, before we thought about anything else. So we thought about the characteristics, because that's what's going to build the longevity, that they stay and they complete the project. And then the second thing that we started to figure out was, okay, what experience do they have to be able to apply to this particular project? One of the last things we think about are people's qualifications.
Fantastic. I totally agree. There's nothing more I can say. Okay, so for a number of our listeners, I'm sure they're probably wondering, I mean, everything you're doing is really amazing, but how can I, as an individual, on my level, how can I facilitate growth and development in Africa as maybe they may be Africans, maybe they may be born and living in Africa, or they may be, British African. So, I mean, can you give us some practical ways young Africans or young
Yeah.
people can facilitate growth and development?
Absolutely. I mean, I spent quite a while actually thinking about this before the meeting, before our podcast even. I think the first thing that I would say is have a particular focus, right? So
Okay.
either think of a sector that you really like, fashion, music, agriculture, and follow that sector in terms of, okay, these are the things, these are the trends that I'm seeing. Or focus on a region and be like, okay, I'm just interested in everything going on in West Africa. So I think pick one of the two, and become informed about what's going on in that area. And then I think the second thing to do after that is build your networks. Use platforms like LinkedIn, use platforms like Instagram for looking for people who are working in the sectors or the regions that you're interested in, and just get more information, have conversations, see, okay, so maybe this is somewhere where I can partner with someone. And I think that's one thing I would emphasize a lot. Partner with people who are already on the ground, because they know more than you.
Yeah.
And they're probably just as skilled as you, if not
Yeah.
more. So don't go in there and be like, I'm here, People are there, people know, you can partner with people. It's a possibility. And then I think the last thing I would give is some practical resources. So obviously there's PAMOJA. If you want to get your consulting experience on your CV or anything like that, you want to get exposure to a particular sector, come through.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say is there are loads of amazing podcasts out there. So another one, for example, is a young lady called Annette, who runs the Diaspora podcast. That focuses a lot about what's going on the continent. Another one is my friend called Benny. So that's Benny's platform isn't a podcast, but it's called Weka Invest. So that is taking small sums of money and pumping that money back into the country. So you build yourself a portfolio as well. So there's so many different ways that you can approach. You can approach it by partnering with people on the ground, becoming more informed, investing small amounts of money, consulting with PAMOJA. So loads of ways.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm really picked on focusing because, when I ask the question, it can seem like a daunting task, especially when you're not really aware. And this goes back to you saying building your knowledge, so reading books, connecting with individuals on ground, but like you mentioned, focusing on one particular area, because if you're passionate about music or fashion or tourism, it means that you can really focus on one sector, and you can look at ways or try to find ways that you can actually make an impact. And I think it's really amazing, the initiative.
And by the way, if you go through some of these government websites, they're like how to invest in Rwanda, for example, how to invest in Kenya. So you can literally go through the government websites and be like, right, here's things that you can contact us and see how you can invest directly. I don't know if they're talking about sums of money which are small. They might be talking about very big sums of money. But at least that gives you a flavor of, okay, these are the areas in the country that they're focused on. Maybe I can find entrepreneurs who are focused on these areas. So
And I think even if you do not have the money to invest, or you can't invest, you can't be a consultant with your, like, for instance, your initiative, I think it's really important to actually just travel and actually try in some way to experience Africa, you won't be able to know the cultures in different countries that well, but try and experience Africa any way you can. I think it's really, really important to broaden people's knowledge and understanding, and kind of move away from certain mentalities and misconceptions about Africa,
Yeah,
and about the way we do things, about our growth, and about how we are developing as
exactly.
a continent. I think that's very important. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I think in any human life, outside of being, you know, offering people respect, being humble and things of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
travel is one of the things, the most valuable investment you'll make. Because
Mm-hmm.
you might look at it, if you travel, you will be able to, it's something that I try and do every year, long haul. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what it will allow you to do is push against your prejudice that you I thought it was this way, but it's not really. So that is completely invaluable. It's I'm with you. It's the most valuable thing that you can probably invest in, other than the intangibles. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you in terms of travel, in terms of exposing yourself to different cultures, and really, yeah, and just learning as much as you can. Like you mentioned, the podcasts, especially in this time where the Black Lives Matter movement, there's a lot of education, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of unlearning that we are doing
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the Black community and allies as well. And I think it's really, really important
Mm-hmm.
to, if this is something that you're passionate about, if you're a young person, a young African, or just anyone who's interested in growth and development, and the
Yeah.
youth,
Yeah.
I think it's key
Yeah.
to invest in, learning. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
So, I mean, we've talked a lot about PAMOJA and, what you are currently doing and the future. So I would like to ask just a few things, any advice that you have for listeners who are looking to take positions of leadership or start
Mm,
a business or just
mm,
create change in their own little way.
right.
So as a leader, so
Mm-hmm.
what are the three characteristics like a leader needs to possess?
Right. Um, I think the first thing that you need to be able to do, and by the way, I'm very not prescriptive in my life, so I never tell people you need to
You're
do
able to
this.
do
But I think these are
this.
one of the things that you probably need to do if you're going to lead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Listen very well. So
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is the best way to put it is there's this book which is called The Wisdom of Crowds, and what it basically tells you is that for the most part, the opportunity, the answers lie in someone else's brain. The
Okay.
key is by you galvanizing that. So I think
Mm-hmm.
listen well, listen intently, listen to others. My personal approach is I don't like speaking too much at the team. I prefer to listen to everyone and collate. So I say that's the first thing. I think the second thing with leadership is personally is setting a standard, a very
Mm-hmm.
high standard. Demand that of yourself, and then as a byproduct, others will follow in a way. My
Mm-hmm.
sister said something last week which was quite interesting. One of my two sisters, she said, a fish smells from the head down. So if you if you don't give good practice,
Yes. Yeah.
it's
Sorry,
strange,
like.
isn't it? It took me a while. It took me a while. I was like, then I kind of got it, and I was like, okay, I really understand this. If you don't, if you have poor practice, you can't expect
Mm.
other people to be excellent and bring something
Mm.
excellent. They may be excellent, but they may not devote excellence to whatever it is you're doing. So I think that's
Mm.
very important.
Mm.
Um, I'll probably say the last thing is understand that as a leader, your position is to serve.
Mm.
It's to empower other people to do things which perhaps they don't think they have the capacity to do, or they
Mm.
haven't tried, or they don't believe for some reason. That is what I really believe as a leader you're meant to do. You're meant to get the best out of macro, the whole team, but individuals as well. Yeah, so I'd say those three things are really important.
Thank you. I think, yeah, everything you've mentioned is really, really important. And in terms of service, I think that is something that every leader needs to have at the back of their minds. You know, your position and your influence is not just for you, it's not just to be recognized, but what are you doing as a leader to ensure that those behind you, following, looking, working with you, are really benefiting from your mission, from everything that you do. I think that's very, very important. And I mean, in terms of leadership in Africa, I would really like to see a lot more of, I don't want to criticize, but, you know, I mean, it's the truth. I would really like to see better leadership. And perhaps, you know, the youth that are coming up, if we can really try to build character and understand that our position is for service and for the greater good, I think it would really make an impact. Yeah.
Exactly. I genuinely think we have a civic duty in everything that we do. Whether you're Steve Jobs or someone else, what you're building is to try and, you know, not just because you really enjoy it, but it's to make this world a little bit better before, you know, you move on. So, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. So finally, you've spoken about a little bit about the future for PAMOJA. And if you could just give us just a brief rundown of what is on the horizon for PAMOJA once again, and how our listeners, if they are interested, can be involved, and where we can reach you. So quite a lot of, that's a three-pronged question.
No problem. Yeah. No problem. So I think what's on the horizon. So as I say, our first project kicks off this week. And that's with a young lady in Kenya who she's using soilless technology to build vegetables.
Wow.
And we're supporting her. Yeah, she's amazing. So we're trying to support her in scaling her business and perhaps pivoting her product into supermarkets. So that's what we've built, a team of about 5 people who are going to be working with her from Monday for 6 weeks. So that's what's happening now. On the horizon on the project side is we're speaking to 2 hubs, one based in Congo, DRC, the other one based in Ethiopia. So we're looking to partner up with our next entrepreneur so that we run one more project before the end of the year. We have a webinar, a PAMOJA talk happening in the next few weeks. So just watch out for that. It's going to have more of a diaspora flavor this time, and how to set up on the continent, if you believe so. So it's something that we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, I'm going to be tuning into that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I suppose the last thing is we're looking to potentially hold a podcast with based on Corona, the COVID series, and one more thing, which comes to mind is we have a thought leadership article which should be coming out very, very shortly, perhaps even next week. So there's quite a few things happening, but please just check out our website, www.pamojanetwork.org. Check out our Instagram, PAMOJA_network, and we're also on Twitter, so you'll be able to get the lowdown on all things PAMOJA on there.
Okay, so what is next for you? Because I know that doing all these amazing things you're doing, working with your team on PAMOJA, you're also working full-time, I believe. So what is next for you? Like, what is next for you in terms of post-pandemic and the recovery and
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I think from a career standpoint, I think the way I kind of envisage my role in society will be perhaps some form of youth um, ambassador. So there's a couple of things that I'm working on at the moment. So the first is I'm hoping next year to go and represent the UK abroad for youth at a youth summit for the UN. So that's one of the things I'm working on. The second thing is building my expertise in trade policy in Africa, trying to have a better understanding of how that relationship works. Also, I think I'm overdue a holiday.
I think we all are, to be honest with you. At this point, I think once it's safe, I'm out here.
Yeah, I'm out. Exactly. So I think that too, sort of outside of work. So there's quite a few things which I'm popping around in my head, even potentially going off and doing a master's for a year as well. So loads of things going on up here, but enjoying life.
Yes. Sorry, I said yes too loudly.
Nah. I'm with you.
Yeah. Amazing. I think fantastic. And what you've mentioned, I think you'd be definitely a great representative at the UN. And everything you've said really speaks to your continued passion and commitment to growing yourself and really investing in the growth and development of youth Africans in the UK and abroad. And I'm really excited, like I always say, massive fan of you and PAMOJA, really excited for what where you go to and where you'll be in the future. I'm really appreciative of giving me your time today. I've learned a lot, and I hope our listeners, anyone watching this, will really learn and be inspired. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for the platform, and I will be watching Creative in Focus going forward.
Yes. We didn't really speak about the creative side of things. I know a lot of people are like, I was expecting like a creative, but I think I think to be able to really to be able to be a change maker, you have to. It involves creativity, it involves thought, and what you're doing is innovative. So I think that is why I wanted you on here, and that is why I want founders as well, creatives and founders, because in some way it is connected. Creativity and innovation is connected. So when I talk about creatives,
I appreciate that.
It's sorry.
One thing I'd also say, Vic, I appreciate so much is I saw my mum be creative many times during our life when we couldn't pay the bills. So for example, she would be creative in that way. So I've seen my dad be creative when he's trying to find himself a job after he lost it. So I think, like you say, there's multiple ways to look at creativity, different ways to be inspired.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jason. I'm going to let you go and enjoy the rest of your day. So lovely speaking to you.
Awesome.
Wow, that was so fantastic. It was so awesome to catch up with Jason. And I really do hope that you enjoyed this episode. I find Jason and his team and their aim and their vision extremely inspiring. And I'm really excited to see how they progress and what they do in the future. If you have enjoyed this episode, do comment below. Let us know what you think about this episode, and if you have any questions, just comment below and we will answer them. You can always connect with us on our other social media platforms, on Instagram at Creatives in Focus, on Twitter at Creatives in Focus. And yes, our full podcast episode is available on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and the major podcast platforms. So yes, feel free to connect with us. Until next time, influence change and create for impact.